But I think you do start to evolve, and you get to a place where no longer is your actual client your customer.
Right.
Let me say that again, right? No longer is your client your actual customer. Your team members become your customer.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider. Got another great guest on, another, I don't know how we feel about this question anymore, like young, or this comment, young entrepreneur. I don't know how young we feel, but a fellow young entrepreneur and sitting around and talking to Casey. I think we have a lot in common, right? We'll get to it on the show. We've only had like one job. We've grown some pretty significant companies in the course of our 20 plus years of being entrepreneurs. Yep. And now we're in the same industry together where we're helping business owners do much of the same. So we got a lot to talk about, but for those of you that are in the SEPA community, you likely know Cultivate Advisors, a big-time supporter of SEPAs and EPI and the work that we're all doing there. He's one of the founders and CEO, Casey is, of Cultivate Advisors. But again, a lifelong entrepreneur, and I want to dive into the early years to what we're doing now. But before we do that, I want to officially welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
And I want to talk about your Alaska trip because you're coming off that. And me and Josh Koza at EPI, we're sitting talking to you about maybe doing some of that stuff together. I think it's actually super cool. So for any business owners or other business leaders listening, Casey does these cool trips where you learn a little bit about your business, your life, and being an entrepreneur and business owner. I'm paraphrasing, you could tell the story.
Yeah, all good.
While going on some pretty badass trip. So talk about the Alaska trip. You just got home from that like a month ago.
Yeah. So we took 12 business owners out. My VP of Ops and myself went to Alaska. It was nonstop adventure. It was nonstop.
If you don't follow him, on LinkedIn,
like climbing glaciers.
Casey Clark, check it out.
Yeah,
because it was like I felt like I was there. Because you have some awesome pictures.
It was all a giving back, right, to our current client base. They had to be nominated to come in, so you have to understand it was a curated group of folks. But what was so cool was to go out and just only talk about scale. And you think about what a lot of business owners struggle with. Yeah, they struggle with the thought of actually getting time to work on their business, right? Get out of that in the trench space and actually have space. And I'm not talking about vacations. I'm talking about literally they were thinking about the business, talking with other entrepreneurs. It was fun, man. It was super inspiring, and you probably experienced this, but one of the few times in a while where I've gotten just hear the impact firsthand from the clients, that are just absolutely crushing it. So
that's also got to be interesting for you too, because you have to learn as well.
Oh, I'm right.
You're also actually taking notes as well. All these people came to learn from you and each other, right?
If you want to be an entrepreneur, you've always got to be in learning mode, right? I mean, you walk me through, you give me a tour of your office, and I'm going, you see me taking a photo, like, I took like 3 photos in here when I walked through. I was like, we're going to do that too. So
super cool.
That's got to be the mindset.
That's how I always feel. We were just talking about this because we do a lot of professional development here at EPI, probably more so than the next small business, right? Me and Chris spent about $200,000 on professional development for our 20 or so people, which I think is a lot.
Yeah,
and
for your size of a company,
for the size of a company, I think it's always a tough one to sell, Dad, but we usually get it done.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's a part of who we are. It's a part of the culture. But we always laugh because coming home, we bring people up to the podium. You saw the podium here.
Yep.
And they talk about what they learned at the conference, but I would say 50% is not necessarily knowledge that they gained from whoever was teaching at the breakout session.
Totally true.
But stuff that they thought about. We do this like this at EPI, or I do this like this on my team, and then I wrote this whole strategy to do it a little bit differently and better only because this guy said 2 words at the breakout session that inspired me to do something, and I'm like that too. We did I'm on the President's Advisory Council for the high school that I went to.
Okay.
And I think I was telling you the story. His name's Casey as well. And I was, just like last month, sitting there feverishly taking notes because of something that Casey presented. I'm like, dude, I could take this this approach, and I wonder how I could mold it into a for-profit business versus a private Catholic all-boys high school. And Casey called me out at this friggin' retreat, and he's like, Snider, you jotting down a lot of notes, man. Like, share your ideas. I was like, I'm sorry, brother. None of these are for you guys. This is literally for my own business.
I'm actually having an innovation moment right now.
Is that what you call them? Innovation
manifestation moment right now. I'm going to need you to leave me alone.
It was like that. So anyways, I think that I have never done something like that, though, like the Alaska trip. Me and my dad have taken a couple of trips. We'll do this maybe every 3 to 5 years, take a big trip, telling you about the Montana fishing trip.
Yeah.
We're going actually to Vegas in a couple of weeks to go see a NASCAR race, but we have like the behind-the-scenes hot passes. We're sitting with one of the race teams there, so we're doing that. But I always do think, I think I've certainly been to business owner groups, But I think that, to your point, having a unique experience, a life experience, combined with sharing your stories with a dozen or so or half a dozen different business owners from around the country, I would assume, has to be a pretty powerful thing. So maybe I'll attend a session.
It's amazing. We should talk.
Okay, fair enough. So I want to get into you as an entrepreneur. So kind of like me, we had like one job for 2 weeks, and then decided to try it on our own. So you're interesting though, at least from my perspective, because after you were you're dominating your paper route, I think it was. Right?
Yeah.
You were dominating.
I would say I rollerbladed several paper routes. I was born out of the womb with efficiency.
Yeah, right. You're
like,
a hockey guy too, so the rollerblades probably was fairly normal for you.
Like the Aerostar van with my dad, like all the seats are taken out, just like jumping out of the back. Just blading around. Yeah.
So after you said, okay, my first business was technically my paper route, you then went into, I think, a franchise that a lot of us know.
I mowed lawns. I was similar to you.
I mowed lawns?
Yeah, I was
landscaper?
I remember my dad going, you want to get to college? You want to get out of this city? You better start mowing lawns. So yeah,
that's what I did.
Yeah, I know you did. So we made flyers, me and a buddy. I haven't got to tell you this yet, but we made flyers. We passed out like 5,000. Ended up mowing, had our mugs on them, and we did really well. Like I got quite a bit of cash actually in the door to go.
So
to
did we, man. We just on Monday here at EPI, I had I was camping, and the Boy Scouts of America were there at this campground, right?
Okay.
And I came around my RV, which is more like a bus these days, I guess. They keep saying like, Scott, you don't have an RV, you have a bus. It's huge, right? It's like 45 feet. Then.
Sure.
But I came around the side because there was like a little water problem, and the water was on the other side, so I just had to go tweak something. But there was literally like 20 Boy Scouts just standing, looking at my RV, and I was like, "What's up, boys?" And they're like, "Nice rig, man." And I was like, "Oh yeah." And then their scoutmaster guy came over, and we were just talking about what I did, and he said, "Hey, do you mind saying something to the boys about what it means to be a business owner? Like, how do you get to a place where you can have cool stuff?
Yeah,
cool stuff like this." But it took me down memory lane. And so I dove into my home office when I got home from that trip on Sunday to look at my old landscaping stuff, because I had this theme at our company-wide meeting on Monday about having this like limitless mentality. Right?
Sure. Yep.
And I think limitlessness is also affected or influenced by your environment, right?
I
so
agree
like
with
people how you're brought up, the people that surround you. I think
just mentality in general. Yeah.
Yeah. I think everybody can get to a limitless mentality. But at the same time, I think it's certainly harder than others. But anyways.
For sure.
I went down memory lane, and you got me going on the story when you thought about flyers, because I showed them, everybody at our company, I showed them my first landscaping flyer.
Yeah.
Because I had a moment when I was like 16 or 17, 2 summers into doing this mowing thing, and I said, dude, I'm done doing these like postage stamped lawns for $20. Like, I want to get a cool truck with my name on it, and I want to go to the big dogs, because I think like we're thorough. We got like a little bit of a knack for this.
Yeah.
I think we're a little bit more business influenced, a little bit more savvy. I showed up for my first commercial property meeting with the vice president of property maintenance in a suit and tie.
Yeah. I knew you know.
I told this story on Monday. She walked straight past me. Her name was Kristen. She walked straight past me and to the desk, and I was like, "Oh, that's Kristen. Never mind."
Yeah.
And then she asked the receptionist there, because it was a nursing home, so it was a fairly secure lobby. And she goes, where's my, whatever, 10 a.m. appointment with the landscaping company that's supposed to be here? She's like, he's Mr. Snider's right there. And she turned around. I was 17.
Right.
So she's like, you're the landscaper? I'm like, yeah. And I had like a black suit, white tie, or a white shirt and a red tie on, right? Real classic.
Yeah,
real classic. So anyways, but yeah, I can appreciate the flyer with the mug, like the mug on it, the mug shot on there and then passing it around and landing your first $20 client.
Well, I think about like most entrepreneurs, right? Somebody in their family has been an entrepreneur before they became an entrepreneur. There's a lot of folks that have that same path, right? And I think what's interesting for me is my dad was not. Like, my dad did not have the entrepreneurial bug, right? But it was interesting. Anytime I needed money for anything, it was never, sorry, we don't make enough. It was always, oh, you want that BMX bike? Here's some soap. Here's a bucket. Go knock on doors and wash cars for $5.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to go to college? Here's my lawnmower.
What did your dad do?
So my dad was in a factory for years,
so,
management,
hard worker,
planning,
right?
hard worker, didn't go to college.
Yeah.
Was the guy running the youth group, trips all throughout my childhood. And just like, I felt like my friends in high school like wanted to come hang out with my dad more than they wanted. It was like, he was that guy. And he unfortunately passed a few years back to an unexpected heart attack. But
wow.
Yeah, but he instilled in me this bug that I didn't even realize.
Yeah.
Because I think he just built my confidence. Is really what it was, right? It's just
fair.
like, oh, I need to go get money. I'll just go get it.
My dad did something similar. We always laugh because I would get pumped up. My dad used to travel a lot corporate-wise, right? And this is back in the day where people would travel in suits and ties.
Sure.
My dad would come home from being gone 4 or 5 days, and over the weekend he'd come home, and he'd put 3 pairs of his shoes out there, a couple of black pair and a brown pair, and he said $5 a pair. And I was like, yeah, he taught me when I was young how to polish a good shoe, right? So he wouldn't get them done in the airport. He would let me come home and make it happen that on Monday morning when he was going back out to the airport, those things were polished and ready to rock. But, if I did 3 pairs of shoes at $5, I remember the first time he did this, he was like, it's $15. So I expected $15. And he gave me like 5. And I was like, what the hell is this?
Put that away for you.
He said, you're going to do 3 things with it. 1, some of it goes to taxes. So that's what that feels like.
Yep.
2, you have to donate some to charity.
Yeah.
So we're going to do some of that. And 3, you're not going to spend it all.
That's awesome.
So it was, without doubt, similar mentality.
Yeah.
But my dad was a pretty purebred business guy, so I learned a lot from a business standpoint as well.
I remember my dad coming home and just going, "Don't work for the man." That's
really.
I still remember that.
As a guy that's working for the man, he's like, "Son, don't go."
Yeah, don't do it. This sucks.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So talk to me about that first true, real entrepreneur. Like, how do you get? Talk to me about the franchise, because to me, it's also interesting. You're a pretty young dude in college, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And you're able to buy and get into a franchise. Like, how did you get funding?
The program is designed. The program is designed for students, right? So they actually front all the cost, and you just go massively in debt, and you better hope you succeed and get out of it.
What if you don't? You gotta pay it back?
A lot of people, parents got involved, had to pay it back. Other folks would have to work it off, for a summer. It's a painting franchise, right? So it was a $15,000 to $20,000 overhead.
Yep.
Business before labor and paint. Pretty simple. Obviously, some of the landscaping. But, so it was. You had to interview. You had to get accepted once you got into the franchise. And I found I was. Kind of fun story. I sucked at it actually at first.
Sucked at painting?
Yeah, so my co-founder and I, we joke about this all the time. He was the best franchisee they had as a rookie, and I was the worst.
Oh, my gosh.
So we go to, this is actually how we met. This is our founding story. So we end up coming together in Kansas City. We're painting with like bullet holes in the side of houses over our spring break to teach us how to paint.
Okay.
And we're out there selling jobs during the spring before we produce them in the summer, pretty seasonal based business. They introduce us and go, well, we're going to pair up the best person with the worst person and see if the best person can help the worst person.
Interesting.
And he'll still take all the credit that I went off and set all these records and was super successful after that. But, what really happened is that, I left and I went, well, if he's the number one guy, God knows I can be the number one.
Okay.
That's really what happened. And I left with all this confidence. So that was kind of how I met my founder too. And most people don't know that was the first year of running this franchise. We were both running our franchise for the first time. Which is just kind of fun for where Dan and I kind of came together.
So is Dan involved in your business today at all?
Yeah, he's on the sales team. Yeah,
so he came with you to Cultivate.
Yeah, so him and I co-founded Cultivate.
He's your co-founder of Cultivate.
I mean, without Dan, we would even got the business off the ground because I was still running this. We'll talk about it, but I was still kind of running this whole enterprise over here of the painting world.
Right.
He had gone off and done some other things, and then we came back together. And we co-founded the company. He was the one doing all the advising out of the gates.
So how long you know Dan then? That's a long relationship.
2005 maybe?
Yeah, so that's almost 20 years.
Yeah, we're coming up on our 20-year anniversary.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
So you get into the one franchise, then you obviously get good. Well, actually, take a step back. I asked you this question when we were talking last night, and I thought it was an interesting one. At this time when you start your first franchise, though, you're a theater major. Right? So you're not an entrepreneur major. You're not like have a concentration entrepreneurship.
I have an entrepreneur degree now.
Oh, yeah, right?
From University of Illinois,
so you're a theater major, and then you're running this franchise. You're successful at it, and what you say to yourself, look, maybe I should learn more about business. I want to transition over to the business school out of the art school.
I was broke. No, I bought a franchise because I was broke.
Okay.
And I think as I got into this, I was talented at music and theater, and I got a full ride to U of I. Went to UIC, the Chicago campus, and really, I had a pretty, lead role in a show while I got into this franchise. So you just imagine my days. Like,
it's super long.
I'm up at 7. I'm in college till 2 or 3. Then I'm in rehearsals till like 6:37. I still remember this. The cafeteria would close at like 7:30. So I had 24 minutes on average to run 5 city blocks through Chicago to get to the cafeteria, just to get the food right before they closed so I could eat. And then I would go make cold calls and dial people to try to get them to let me do estimates on the weekend. And then I'd wake up at 5 in the morning, drive out to my territory, do estimates all weekend long, and then come back and just rinse, lather, and repeat.
So in that franchising model, are you also out painting, or are you more of the business and sales person?
I never really did much painting. No,
so you would hire some other, college kids?
Yeah, my first year I probably had about 18 employees over the summer.
Wow.
They were painting all the houses. I had a production manager that did all the power washing and all the prep work to set up the crews. And
So something about my own business, right? So I had to learn the difference. I think what I always thought about going back and looking at like a franchise model for a young person in particular, or even maybe like a retiring executive that wants to get their hands in business.
You see that all the time.
The franchise model is kind of nice because at least you have some infrastructure, right? I would assume they taught you stuff, and
they didn't teach me a lot about painting. They taught me a lot about how to run a business, how to think about it, integrated marketing strategy, how to go recruit and interview and hire the right people, how to train, what's appropriate training look like. I got tons of fundamentals, and even more so when I really started to scale past just the one franchise. But
so talk to me about that. So now you're actually good at that. And they go, Casey, I want you to take on more.
So I'm 20 years old. I'm a junior in college.
That's wild.
I've got at that point I've got maybe 65 to 70 employees. I'm clearing 6 figures in a summer of EBITDA. Taking home and
that definitely helped pay for college.
I got rid of the scholarship for theater and music. Got my minor in that and moved over to a major in entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Which was essentially just like take 2 or 3 accounting classes at the time, 2 or 3 finance classes. I didn't learn a lot there. I learned it all kind of just doing the business, right? And I know you agree with some of that.
100%, yeah.
And so we, I got into it, and essentially they came and said, hey, look, we think you'd be pretty good at coaching some of these. You're doing some really big numbers. Could we have you come in and help coach and support this? We'll let you buy in, et cetera, et cetera. And so I start to coach these franchisees, and I realize I'm pretty good at this. So I actually go part-time in school. I take 2 more years to finish.
Okay, so I could have extended
because they're paying. I'm making $60,000 salary for the year
as a 20-year-old dude. Right?
Yeah, with a bunch of incentives, and still running a small business on the side with them to make a bunch of extra cash because I could kind of do it in my sleep at that point. And anyway, it was just a fun. I just kind of had a different collegiate experience. Is what I
could tell.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally
so I graduate. I'm like, well, what's next? And the corporate guys at this franchise system kind of said, hey, look, why don't you come in? We'll let you buy in as additional partner, and let's let you go scale this thing. And I had about 13 to 14 franchisees that were in kind of this core area. And by the time I left, we had over 100 franchisees and 600 plus employees, that I was responsible for and driving. So it was.
And how old were you then? So you're at your peak there. You got 100 franchisees,
27.
So 28. What was that experience like? How do you know what to do? Are you kind of winging it along the way too? I'm sure there's
a lot of fake to make for sure.
Yeah, right.
No doubt. But I also had amazing mentors. I don't want to sell that short. If you look at the college pro business, College Pro isn't around anymore. It's owned by CertaPro.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense to have a $900 million adult painting company and then a $50 million college painting company. So I understand the merge that they did, but ultimately, when it was still around, you look at some of the folks that have come out. I mean, like Kimball Musk, Elon Musk's brother, came out of that program.
Out of the College Pro?
Yeah, there's the amount of entrepreneurs that have come out of this thing and are just, we actually have some that are even clients now of Cultivates.
That's got to be kind
of a cool thing. I've got 4 or 5 that were part of the program that are advisors on our team because they've gone to run other businesses and then came back to work with us. It was a network powerhouse because at 19 years old, you learned how to hang 2,000 door hangers a week. You learned how to knock on doors and generate 10 or 15 leads, put up 40 signs, send 2,000 pieces of direct mail.
Yeah.
You learn the marketing. You learn how to close, have a close rate with, middle class to upper wealth.
Did you have any trouble navigating that? Not necessarily from the business side of things, but just when you're knocking and having a conversation with a person that's 20 years, 30 years older than you that needs to spend. How much does an average house cost back then as paint?
It was cheap. I mean, it was like $3,000. Now it's way more.
I was going to say like couple $1,000, but still a good chunk of change to part with.
Yep.
Did you have any? Did you have to navigate your youthfulness? Like they're knocking on the door, like who's this friggin' kid?
Luckily the name speaks for itself, right?
Yeah,
so when you
that
show
was
up,
beneficial.
Yeah, and you better believe I had pictures of hey, I went to school on a full ride. Here's who I am. Here are my grades.
Well, that's
I'm in this to learn how to run a business. By you investing in me, you're investing in my entrepreneurial career.
Solid pitch.
Yeah, it actually was. And a lot of times I was more expensive, and they would hire me because at the end of the day, look, I'm going to pick up the phone. And how I succeed in painting your house one day is going to totally dictate how I am and the success level I'm going to have as an entrepreneur.
100%.
And I think about it all the time. I wish I could actually find my old client list. I don't have access to it anymore. I've lost it.
Yeah.
Because I would love to email everybody and just say thank you.
I know, right?
Look what I've gone and done
100%.
since that world. I remember, if you don't give me your deposits, let me pay your house. I can't pay rent on Sunday. and I might get kicked out. I mean, those were the thoughts that first year of running a business, right? I was just on my own in a big city, just trying to figure it out, and came from, very blue collar based family and loving family. Don't get me wrong, but just money wasn't a surplus. So
that's I remember when I hang out with guys like you that are like fellow young entrepreneurs that started like that. I was like the local paper here in Cleveland's called the Plain Dealer.
Okay.
And they had interviewed me one year in the business section because they have like a whole entrepreneurial spotlight about navigating your age. Because a lot of doors were also when I got into the commercial world with I would when I was talking about this on Monday with my team, her name was Kristen West. So it's like, Kristen, if you're happen to fall on the Exit Is Now podcast, thank you. And I'd love to take you out to lunch because she said to me, Scott, we have 3 locations.
Okay.
I don't know who your company is. I see your pictures. Your work looks nice, but it's all I didn't have any commercial properties. All just like cookie cutter, postage stamp, subdivision yards. But I like you, and you're in a suit. And to your point, I used to use at that time I would have been still in high school. So St. Edward High School carries a big name here in Cleveland and certainly nationally. I was just in Boston, and a guy said, "Oh, you're from Cleveland? You go to St. Ed's?" I was like, "In fact, I did." He's a big wrestler, right? We're a big wrestling school. And she's like, "Well, you go to St. Ed's because I saw it on your brochure because I put proud student at St. Edward High School. I thought that would mean something, and apparently it did to her.
Absolutely. It's
but
all
she
branding.
said, "We have 3 properties. I will give you one of them."
And if you crush
and if you crush this, we'll talk about the other 2.
Yeah.
But she took a gamble, right? Because and I didn't appreciate it enough being a 17 or 18-year-old kid because she was probably 45, 50 years old, and she's in charge of the look of their property.
Right. Because
it's a nursing home, right, or an assisted living facility. You're putting your mom and dad there. You don't want it to look like hell.
Right.
So it's like I didn't realize how much that probably meant because she's probably saying, if you screw this up, I'm screwed. Right. Because this is my job. I know you're just trying to get your first account here, but you still live with mom and dad. I got 3 kids, Right. I didn't have any appreciation for that until I got older and started running larger companies. You're like, wow, that was actually a big risk. But I remember my clients because they're super local. But it got me thinking about pulling that old client list and saying thanks.
The cost for me was the hard part, right? What do you mean I'm going to charge $9,000 to paint this Victorian? I've never even seen $9,000. I remember that first year.
Yeah.
There's no way. I remember I underpriced so many jobs because I would run my math and go, it says $4,000. There's no way. I'll just charge them $2,000.
Oh my gosh.
And I'd go in there and then I'd be like, oh, I made no money. That was stupid.
I know. I had the same experience. My dad used to ride my ass when I would estimate spring cleanups.
Sure.
So I remember the Kemper House, this nursing home the first nursing home we had to do 200 yards of mulch, 200.
Wow.
So a typical residence like my house takes 8 yards. Sure. A nicer, bigger house and a nice subdivision probably takes 12. So 200, I'm like, and we heft that thing around with wheelbarrows and shovels, me and Mikey. Right. It took us a week. And she was cool with that too. They won't have the pump truck blowing it in.
Yeah.
She's like, you're going to put 200 yards of mulch in my parking lot. I'm like, no, Kristen. I'm going to put 10 yards at a time. We're going to do 10 yards each day for 20 days.
Yeah.
And, but I ended up misestimating that job. It was 300. So I ate 100 yards of mulch at $30 a yard. We made no money. Estimating was super tough for me when I was young too, because you just had no really idea. Or when you got into those commercial properties,
and you saw the bigger price point, you got scared.
Yeah, or I was like, there's no way it's even worth that. I wouldn't pay that.
Right.
I'll cut it in half. Yeah. Instead of 10, I'll charge you 6.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
and
sold.
There went all of my margin.
Yeah. So get to the exit now. So now you're out of college, right? So you're out of college.
Yeah, I've been out of college.
You got the 100, right? You got the 100 franchisees, the 600 employees. What prompts I want to go do something else?
Yeah, I think, look, painting is painting. Yep. I wanted to take a stab at different industries, and I'd proven I could scale an organization within an organization, right? Because I own a subset of a large organization, and transparently, when I went into the structure of it, it was probably a better deal for those that were above me than it was for myself, and I was happy with that. I got a lot of mentorship. I learned a lot. I always say, you make your first business, you make other people money. Your second business, you make yourself money. That's kind of the rule of thumb that you see, and so I think that's what kind of led to the discovery of I'm ready to do this. But also, I had built myself out of the business. I'm happy to say this now that it's no longer. I don't know if I was working more than 5 hours a week.
Right.
I was not working in that business. I was doing a couple meetings, and one of the gals actually who ended up taking it all over is actually now back with me
at Cultivate.
She actually oversees our entire advisory team.
Yeah, isn't that wild, man?
Yeah, it's she's fantastic. She's just an absolute rock star. And but so that was, I think, because I had the successor in place.
Yep.
I knew that I wanted to go off and kind of cut my teeth on maybe my own brand, my own ideas.
Yeah.
That's what really started to supercharge it.
So that you sell back everything that you had, or like
that's pretty much how it works.
Pretty much how it works.
Think of like more like a law firm. You're a partner in the firm. You own so much of the equity, kicks out.
Yeah. Okay. So so they kick. Yeah.
And it's a set equation based on how the franchisor works. And,
That's what I'm saying. A little different than
very
businesses
different
today,
very
or a lot
different.
of privately held companies, right?
Very
so I
different.
always think yes. I think it would be a really cool model because you get a lot of support until you have to go exit. Like we were talking to a financial advisory firm that has franchises like that.
You got to scale so much to make
Well, they're talking about exit planning, so they're learning about what we talk about all the time, stuff that you and I know.
Yep.
And they're like, well, if our franchise follows any of the national stats, 50% of our owners are probably baby boomers, and they likely want to exit in 3 to 5 years. So, but as a franchisee of a particularly financial institution, financial services firm, there's like a lot of qualifications of your buyer. Like me and you can't just go buy it. You have to be like a CFP. You have to have some kind of designation. You have to be owner operator,
certain net worth, all
all of that. So I think then you're kind of held. It's an interesting way. Like how are you going to get the right buyer? But nonetheless, I think the franchise model of selling is different. So I want to get into what you're doing today after a quick break. So we're going to talk about Cultivate. I want to talk about one of the coolest things when I entered the space was the amount of different types of owners and businesses I was then exposed to. So talk about a learning experience. So we're going to be back in just a quick minute. So just give us a minute. We'll see you soon.
The Exit Planning Institute is the authority in exit planning. With its award-winning process, the Value Acceleration methodology provides deep insights into how to help business owners create more significant companies while blending and aligning their business, personal, and financial goals. EPI brings together the world's most elite exit planning advisors to form the EPI community. The EPI community represents over 15,000 professional advisors worldwide, including its 5,000 certified exit planning advisors. These advisors include financial advisors, growth consultants, CPAs, attorneys, M&A advisors, amongst others, who come together to expand their knowledge, create and innovate, network and relationship build, grow their practices, and better attract and engage business owner clients. Join EPI today and gain access to the community, content, courses, credential, and conference that you as the professional advisor need in order to harness the opportunity with small to lower middle market business owners who strive to grow a company of significance, thus having a highly valuable and transferable company. Follow the Exit Planning Institute on LinkedIn and visit earnsepa.com to learn more about the community leading the exit planning profession.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. So we just heard Casey's story of being a young entrepreneur and cutting his teeth in his painting franchise. So after he got out of that, he started a company with his business partner called Cultivate Advisors. The first thing about that business for me, Casey, is that you started in like 2013 or 14.
2014, yeah.
So 2014, I was also just entering this space of business advisory exit planning, right?
Sure.
Because Dad and I would have bought EPI in October of 12.
Okay.
And we would have placed his methodology, now what we call the Value Acceleration methodology, into the SEPA curriculum in the spring of the following year, right? So we kind of sat on the business for a little bit before we made too many changes, debuted Value Acceleration in the spring, and then make some bulk changes that kind of stood in the fall, right? So I think it's interesting being two young guys. So, I mean, if you think about it, it's like I was like 28 years old, I guess.
Yeah, I was 26, 27.
So it's, and entering this business advisory space. Oh, yeah. So when you entered in 2013, giving the exit planning profession was still fairly new. Like we had like 120 SEPAs. Did you incorporate like exit strategy from the get-go, or was it really more about business planning and success?
Yeah, it was all business scale.
It
was all scaling and growing, right? And that's still kind of our premise. But what we found is that, exit and scaling were exactly the same.
Well, that's what we all talk about today,
exact
right?
same principles.
Exit strategy is business strategy.
Yeah, it only took us a few years to identify that. But,
okay.
Yeah, so when we came out, we more came from the business coaching side, right? You think about my transition coming from franchising. I knew what systems looked like for scale. I knew what it meant to take to a ton of employees. Not only a ton of employees, but a ton of different business units, all having to operate with multi-locations, right? So I had a really good, if somebody wanted to grow multiple locations, I had that skill set. If somebody needed a lot of employees, had that skill set. If somebody wanted to put the right infrastructure that made it super turnkey, I had the ability to do that. So that was kind of what I sold on when we first got out, when I was still doing the advising, when Dan and I, because the first 2 years we had no employees.
Yeah, it was just
the two of us.
Where did you guys work out of your houses, or how'd that start?
Yeah, so that's a funny story. So Dan was living in Milwaukee. I was in Chicago.
Okay.
He moved down to Chicago, and my girlfriend at the time, who's now not my girlfriend, nor did I get married. And there's a reason for it. Is because I go to her. I'm like, hey, my buddy's going to move down, and we're going to go get a house together, and he's going to live with us. We had already been living together for 2 or 3 years.
You and your girlfriend were living
My
together.
girlfriend and I have been together for a long time. So you can imagine her
Dan
mind.
moves in with you
Yeah,
guys?
Dan moves in, right? So you can just imagine my girlfriend at the time going
man.
like, it seems like we're taking a step back.
Yeah,
in
right.
terms of
Wait
it.
a
So,
second.
Yeah, that didn't work out. But so we lived together, but we ended up getting a WeWork. We were one of the, in a glass bubble there for a couple of years and did all the advising right out of that space. And so we decided to start to scale it, which that would have been early to mid 2016.
And back then, you were doing primarily Greater Chicago type businesses.
It was all in
local,
person.
right?
It was all local. That was our
bringing that little glass work, WeWork space.
Yeah. Like come sit in my fishbowl with me. Yeah.
And so, what about like process and methodology? I actually find you to be like a very methodical guy. At least that's my impression, right? When hanging
my
out
understanding
with you,
of myself too, but we'll find out.
Right. So, what kind of approach did you have back then? So you talked about systems, scaling.
Yeah.
What was that? Is it the same approach now as you did back then, or how has that evolved now?
It's evolved to where it's much simpler for me to explain. Here's my 3 pages of stuff I can help you with.
Right.
Now it's like, hey, here's my methodology all in one simple image with six terms I can shout out, and you'll know exactly what we do.
Yeah.
Right.
So what is that? What is that? What are the 6 terms? What if you were talking to me as a business owner? What's that look like?
Yeah. Well, our opinion is this: like there are more. There's more resources, more tech. There is more money. There is more ability to develop yourself than there has ever been for entrepreneurs.
That's fair.
Yet there is almost a worse failure rate. Some people will say the barriers are too low to get in. It's become easier to start being a business owner, and for that reason,
do you think it is easier?
I don't. I think it's harder to stand out. I think it's a difference between having a hobby and like doing a side hustle versus actually having a business. You have to decipher that.
That's fair. Yeah, got a lot of side hustle today.
But I think the failure rate is through the roof. Even companies that are reaching 8-9 figures, you're seeing failures that you don't always see because you don't know what's around the corner these days.
That's fair.
What I really found is that the thing that was missing, in my opinion, was the business owner learning how to become the CEO.
Okay.
How to actually work and then actually how to transfer those skills into a leadership team. Those two transitions is usually the pain points where we found most owners fell apart or things went sideways or they got on that dreaded treadmill and they're running in place, but the business isn't going anywhere.
Right.
And so with that in mind, we came up with this methodology called the propeller. So our mission is to propel businesses beyond their expectations.
Right.
And our propeller is this. It's a simple analogy. Financials is the engine, right? If you don't have the right size of engine for where you want to have that plane take off and land to, you're not going to make it. All right, so you got to have enough cash in the bank. You have to have the right pricing metrics in place. You have to have everything tied back appropriately and the right cash strategy. Then from there, you have these propeller blades, which on the growth side is sales and marketing, and on the capacity side is leadership and recruiting. The reality is if you don't have those systems, if you don't have those skills as an owner, but also your team is super strong, not just you,
right.
They have to be built out consistently. So what most owners face is they come in and it gets really turbulent. You see the analogy here when they're up in that plane because maybe they came from a sales corporate job. So they've got a 9 out of 10 of their sales propeller filled up. Marketing's 8 out of 10. Leadership is 2 out of 10. Recruiting's 3 out of 10. And they're constantly saying, I can find business, but I can't figure out how to run the operations. Or it's vice versa. They're a strong operator. Very rarely do we see somebody that can be good at both. And most companies are jumping back and forth between the two in different strides of the season. And then we encase all of that with what we call productivity, which isn't just hours work, but it's tech enablement, all the systems, automation, guardrails that actually help keep all the human capital inside the business. Yeah. And if you really get that propeller spinning at the right speed with everything talking, your company will grow and it will scale very, very quickly. Yeah. And I almost can guarantee if you start to look in there, if it's a good market, if there's a market for what you do and you have a decent product or service at high quality, one of those 6 things is what's holding you back from growth and scale.
So in filling up those propellers, right? So if I'm really good at sales and marketing, but poor at recruitment and leadership, are you making that owner better in those areas? Or are you saying, let's hire some folks that are better than you in those areas and bring them on? Or maybe a little bit of both, I guess.
That and many other options, actually, right? So it's definitely holistic. We come in truly as the advisor. We are sitting with the owner. We are becoming that business partner on retainer, not giving up equity, right? Yeah, right. And we are literally meeting them even, keel to keel to help them grow and scale this organization. Yeah. So a lot of times we're showing them tools, bringing in resources, teaching them, or we're working with their team to help implement those things. Or sometimes we bring in outside experts where we actually need to bring in a vendor that's very specific for your industry, for this element, and they're going to work with you on that. We're the quarterbacks.
I think that you've done actually a nice job doing this in your own business. There's several times over the past couple of days where we've been hanging out where you have literally said, and I always smile when you say it, you say, I don't know a lot about that, but this guy in my business does.
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool because I also think that's where owners lack too, right? It's almost
know your lane.
Well, you gotta know your lane, and I also, as somebody that has frankly over the last 3 years, like post-pandemic, has surrounded myself with people that are like, half the time I don't really know what you're talking about, but there's like a trust factor there, and you hit your metrics and stuff where it's like, I don't really know what all that is, but we're doing well. It seems like the right thing, but you're uncomfortable as an owner because, at least for me, and maybe it's my own ego, where, like, for example, Paige, like, I feel Paige is wildly smarter than me. And frankly, sometimes it's intimidating, where I'm like, shit, I think I need to go read a book or something so I could, like, level up with her.
I need to go read a marketing book.
But that's what I'm saying. I think that you are that, to me, you're that kind of guy, too, because there's a lot of times over the past couple of days we've been talking about that says, look, I don't know. Like, and you're cool saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
But this person does it, my company, so let me team you up with them.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, Scott, let's do that together, but you won't be working with me, you'll be working with him. It's just very, it's something that I'm trying to get towards, I should say.
I mean, it's
like
interesting
this delegate
you say that,
and
right?
elevate kind of stuff that we hear.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm an idea guy, right? I'm the, if I took Working Genius, right, it'll say like, look, this guy loves to create ideas. He loves to high tenacity, tons of ambition, but loves to galvanize and sell people on something and get people all riled up and excited to go achieve something together, right? I love it. Like, that's where I get all my energy from. And so you think about that. I love to generate the ideas, but you learn very quickly that scale when you have that. I mean, it's one of the value drivers, right? It's like if you have too much owner dependency in the business, you're going to put yourself in a situation where it can't grow, right? You're the bottleneck. And so I think part of it is I don't want to say I was groomed that way. I think I came in like most entrepreneurs with a ton of ego and grit to get through those early stages. But I think you do start to evolve and you get to a place where no longer is your actual client your customer.
Right.
Let me say that again, right? No longer is your client your actual customer. Your team members become your customer. So in my mind, right, there is a transition for every owner, and it happened for me too, where it's just like I no longer. It's not that I don't care. We need to do a good job for them. I have expectations and standards,
of course.
But at the end of the day, I don't spend any energy on the customer. I don't spend more than an hour aside of these trips I'm getting to do now, which I made. I've got 2 young ones at home. My wife's like, we can't go on vacation anymore. I'm like, well, I'm going to go on vacation.
I'm going to go on vacation with a bunch
I'm going to figure out how to
of
get paid and go on vacation.
Right, exactly.
But seriously, like that is an important skill, and I think where most people screw it up is even if I do know a lot about a topic, it's also a bit of a trained response in full reality. Because if I'm not enabling my people, how can they take on more? How are they going to hit their
How can you scale
vision?
your own business?
And how can I scale? I have 2 or 3 core functions I have at this company right now, and I have to deliver them flawlessly. I have no time to spend on other things that aren't in those 3 things.
It's just so laser focused, even when you say it right there too. It's just How did you get there? Like, how did you get to that mentality that you could say that I have
10,000 times?
Right? Because obviously, fast forward 10 years. You have like over 100 employees, advisors.
Yeah, we have 100 team members. Yeah,
100 team members
across the country.
Cultivate, across the country.
Yep.
And you're just I think I told you this too. It's one of my struggles as an entrepreneur today in scaling our business. It's like for the first time I'm not involved in like hiring people.
Yeah.
So one, it's just kind of weird for me because this is like my thing. It's like
you get to a point where you don't know everybody's names.
Well, now I don't. Yeah. I mean, we're not to the point where you might be to that point. But
I've got most names, but there's still a few that
you
I'm
don't
like,
get to see. Plus, your business is all over. At least here we come in the office.
Yeah.
These 100 people at Cultivate aren't coming into an office every Monday. Yeah.
Yep.
So at least I can come to the office, spend a little bit of time. But it is I don't know them or hang out with them as deep as I used to. Number one. And number two, there's this weird thing that happens at EPI now, and our folks are probably laughing if they're listening to the podcast, where we had 3 potential hires come into the office, and like they don't introduce me as Scott the owner or Scott the president. Like Jesse had some folks in that he was interviewing this week, and he said, "Hey, and this is Scott." But if you prepared for the interview, you know who I am kind of thing. And they're like, you could tell their mentality, like, oh, that's the owner. I'm like, no, I'm just a regular guy. Like, come on. Or some of our new employees, like, they'll like perk up when I walk by. And I'm like, guys, can we relax a little bit?
Has this happened yet? So a lot of business owners get uncomfortable when your team starts to kick you out of stuff. So I used to do a CEO interview till about 4 or 5 years ago. And then the recruiting team came to me and was like, Casey, you're booted. You're not allowed to do that anymore. We're going to take that step over. Okay. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Right. Like I thought I was helping protect the clan.
Yeah. I don't know if I've been booted. There's two things that
you should want to get booted.
I want to. It does.
You should want to get booted.
There's two things like that are maybe similar type experience and aren't all the way booted. What I've seen more often than not this year is like a decision happens that I'm unaware of, and then I'm like, I don't know if I really like what you guys did there. And they're like, well, tough, Scott. Like that happened 60 days ago. I was like, we've been doing it that way for 60 days.
That's goal versus path, though, right?
Yeah,
like your job is to identify the goal, the direction, the vision, the allocation, and their job is to come up with the path, and it's your job to get the hell out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other one that's closest to that is Paige kind of kicked me out of a meeting because I said, hey, we're hiring a graphic designer. We've outsourced our graphic design for the most part here at EPI, and we've come to a point where we can have somebody on the team that gets to know us, knows our style, and we could be like just shuffling work, on our own time, on EPI's time versus outside vendors and partners. But I just told you, the last 5 employees here that we've hired, I haven't met them until day 1. So that's kind of a cool experience where I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm, I didn't have to be involved in that process, but Paige, given the graphic designer for me, was such a critical role because we do a lot of content and a lot of stuff like that. I said, hey, when you get down to your 3, like I'd like to be involved. I'd like to see. Yeah. And she just like looked at me in her office and it was like, you could tell she wanted to say to me like, are you freaking kidding me? But she didn't. So she cocked her head in a way that I was like, you're a little upset right now.
Well, I know
because my schedule's ridiculous. Because there's like, okay, so I need to hire somebody in like 30 days. Yeah. So I guess we're not hiring anybody till like December 1st then, Scott. And I'm like, no, we got 30 days. And she's like, well, then why are you involved in this process? So I don't know if she kicked me out of a meeting, but she kicked me out of hiring a graphic designer. That's for sure.
I'll tell you, it's it's like any type of repetition, right? Any type of habit you train yourself to know. Yeah. Once you start to have it happen, you actually get really comfortable with it. And then when you have to be involved, it's really awkward.
Yeah, right. I guess I got to get there. Or now I'm involved. I'm
now you're like, why am I involved in
this?
Why?
I don't even know. What do I do?
This is awkward.
Yeah. So what do you see? So over 10-something years now of Cultivate and the demographic of the business owner changing. So this is a hot topic for us too because we're doing a national state of owner readiness survey. So we did a national one in 2013. We're doing another one now. And the demographic of the business owner has certainly changed, right? We used to say 60% of the privately held companies are owned by the baby boomers.
Yep, that's
now
transition.
That's down to 51%.
Yep. And I think it's going to have a massive drop in the next 2 years.
In the next 2 to 3 years, because I think the average boomer is like 67 years old, so they're all passing that average age is all going. So
absolutely.
Then you see 43% of the market owned by guys and gals in our age range, in 30s and 40s and early 50s. So has your approach changed at all with owners, given that I think that the owners' needs are a little bit different, like their generational characteristics are different? I guess my real question is, how have you seen that profession in our space kind of evolve over the last 10 years?
We've been really blessed because we've got advisors of all different age groups, right? So our average advisor age is, probably in the high 40s, low 50s, right? So we've got folks that are semi-retired or to the point of retirement. We've got people that are early that had some crazy tech startup or, did really well.
Right? Yeah.
And, so to have that range, we also then attract a lot of business owners from all over the map. Here's what I will tell you. What does stand out to me is this. We are having more and more conversations about the generational handoff than ever before. We are having more discussions of going, all right, my son or daughter doesn't want to take this business. I guess I'm going to have to find somebody within. That's happening more and more. We're hearing, we're getting brought in constantly on opportunities where the business owner is in a place where they're going, I just don't trust. I have the person. I just can't seem to let go of it. I'm going to have to just leave and hope it works out. But I'd like to proactively get in front of it. So I would say we've seen that trend. I would say demographic-wise, though, we are built to manage and work with so many different companies in so many different ranges. It's how we built the company to create a diversified advisor set. That I think we've avoided some of seeing that trend just because we already have so many business owners in different levels that have come to us. Just full transparency.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of business owners in their 40s that are actually looking to sell and then go do another business? We were talking about this a little bit too.
Yeah. I mean, look, every business owner has their own vision, their own journey they're going to take, right? Yeah. And some are multi-businesses. A lot of times it's the opposite. Most of the time we actually meet the guy or the gal and it's like, here are my 8 businesses. And you're like, we're going to strip that down to 1. We're going to say, no, those babies are ugly. We're going to kick those 7 out.
Let's focus on one thing.
You can come back to that after you're super successful at this one. I'd say that's more of what we see.
Interesting. Yeah,
and then they sell that one, or they get a liquidity event, and then they go off.
Yeah.
Again, it depends on what demographic, right? If we're talking about our $1 to $10 million companies, I see a lot of that. If we're talking about the companies we service that are 10 to 50 million, I see a completely different conversation there.
Yeah, because at a $10 to $15 million revenue company, they're definitely not having multiple things going on because they probably got to that level.
They've gotten focused in. They're starting to build that leadership team fully out.
That's
they're trying to scale via acquisition, or they're looking for an exit. That's
kind of how me and Dad were. That was kind of how me and Dad were back in 2012 because EPI was so small. Right?
You're dabbling. You're still finding your way.
We were so small that we had a email or a direct marketing company.
You guys had every company. I'm
pretty convinced. If you look in the hallway behind us, it's like the little tombstones of companies.
I'll have to go look at it.
But you had at the time we had my dad's consulting company. We had the Exit Planning Institute. We had a company that was called 2M Direct, which is like a direct marketing company. We had a real estate company. But they were all these onesie-twosie things.
Yeah.
And to your point, and this is a good business lesson for me too. It's like somebody has to wake up giving a shit about it every day. But if I'm running 5 companies, I can't possibly give a shit about one singular thing. I give a shit about 5 things. So
my partner and I, Cultivate was not the first company we founded.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, what was it?
Before this, we founded a company called Knocking Concepts.
Okay.
So that way the initials were KC, my name, because I was super
cool,
ego-driven at the time.
Nice.
Like your M&S landscaping.
Yeah.
But it was all about, we essentially had this idea to outsmart Valpak and these money mailers. And we're like, we'll go hang 50,000 door hangers in an area, and we'll put 4 or 5 brands on these really long, oversized, big door hangers. And we'll do all the imagery, and we could sell it. And the whole idea was like, they don't have to open up the envelope. And we'll perforate each of them because no one actually wants to hold on to this whole door hanger, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
We do it. Like, we go hire a sales guy. We take out a SBA business loan, and then
Oh my gosh, so this is like a real deal.
We ran it for like a year, a couple $100,000 in revenue, just get it off the ground. And then Yellow Pages comes out with the exact same product, way better, and offer it at like half the price. And literally the day it got announced, we just like gave up.
Yeah, you're like,
and we hate this. We don't even like this. Like, this isn't.
And then you did Cultivate.
And that's what led us to Cultivate, actually, is because we would be in these janitor closets of mom and pop shops, and we would be teaching them what integrated marketing was and how to put the multiple strategies to place and how to measure ROI and how to understand what the call to action was and an awareness phase before you brought them to consideration to then down to decision making, right? So we were like teaching already and went, that's what we love. That's what we want to wake up and do every day.
So what I want to also transition to, and I think it's always a big topic on my show, this work-life balance and blend. Justin Goodbread was on the show, one of the first podcasts that we had. And he challenged me, and I've stuck with me ever since, that as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you're never going to be, and as a human being, really, it's never balanced. Yeah. It's blended, right? So it's always kind of that debate, whether it's blended, balanced, aligned.
Yeah. I don't buy in the 4-hour work week. Correct.
Yeah, right.
Like, I understand.
Yes. So, but I think it's something that you're also passionate about and something that you've done. So over that 10 years of growing from 2 employees to 100 team members, you've also had a couple of kids and got married, which is another blend and balance. So I want to segue into the more personal side, but we're going to do that after a quick break. So stick with us, and we'll see you in a little bit.
For business owners, by a business owner. Walking to Destiny is your essential resource for understanding what makes your business highly profitable and significant. It becomes a business owner's handbook to know how to rapidly grow value and ultimately unlock the personal wealth trapped in business. Exit Planning Institute CEO Christopher Snider demonstrates how strategic exit planning will help you achieve improvements today while positioning you to build wealth for generations. Secure your success along other value creators. Discover, prepare, and decide what your walk to destiny will ultimately be. If executed correctly, these strategies can grow a business owner's wealth by 10 times. Walking to Destiny, the second edition, the 11 actions an owner must take to rapidly grow value and unlock wealth. Get your copy today at www.walkingtodestiny.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. So we kind of come through over the last 50 minutes or so your entire story from college painting all the way to Cultivate and everything across, and then kind of everywhere in between. So one of the things I said that I also thought was interesting in this 10-year journey of growing a pretty substantial company was getting married, having kids, and this path to a blend or a balanced life, something that I think we all kind of struggle with business owners. So How do you do it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've got a lot of thoughts. How much time do we have? I think the simple part of it is this. I have operated since so my painting business was a burnout, just in full transparency. I was working 80-hour weeks. Yep. I did not have blend. I was a 20-year-old, 25-year-old party animal.
Yeah, kicking ass. Yeah.
Kicking ass.
Yeah.
Didn't care. Was working every hour I could.
Yep.
When I started this, I knew I needed something more sustainable. I had other priorities in life that were important to me, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And full transparency, about a year and a half in, I came up with a rule. And I just said, you pick the number of hours you're willing to work every week, and that's the most amount of hours you're allowed to work. No ifs and buts about it. You will solve it if you want to. And so I know some people use the words blended, like it's in season. I disagree with that.
Really?
I really do.
So it's not seasonal for you. You're going every week?
Yeah, I mean, look, for it's fine if like 1 week I'm like, oh, I've got a big conference, it's a lot of travel, so I'm gonna have to work 55 hours this week. Yeah, that's fine. But the reality is for me, I work 45 hours a week, and you're not gonna get me to work outside of that under any circumstance.
So it's the same hours for you most.
I work at 9 to 5.
9 to 5.
Yeah, I may start earlier, but yeah, like I have my schedule. And this is the schedule. Like imagine in my Google Calendar right now, you went in there, you just see nothing but blackouts. Yeah. No one can touch it, and I will not give on it.
And so how did you structure that, though? So did you do that early on, or was that something that you said
just block it out? Yeah, just block it out. Pretend it doesn't exist. And it kills my wife. Like my wife works at corporate jobs. Just an amazing person. Yeah. Kills her even because she's at night I'll be like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. I've got so much going on. I'm so far behind. I probably need 9 hours to catch up. She's like, just work. I'm going to work tonight. You work. Like, let's not watch a show tonight. I'm like, absolutely not. Yeah. And she just laughs like, well, why are you complaining? I'm like, because I have a lot to do and I'm behind by 9 hours and I have to go problem solve that next time I go back to work.
Yeah. Tomorrow morning at 9.
Tomorrow morning when I start at 8 a.m.
Yeah, whenever you start.
Yeah. But so for me, I believe some people need to hear this. I don't disagree with blended. I don't believe that is actually truly the way it has to be done. Yeah, I believe that you can lock and load because otherwise you don't ever find your efficiencies. You don't ever find your production output because you're willing to move the number of hours. But when you have a flat number of hours, it forces you to start to delegate. It forces you to start to move stuff off your plate. And if you don't, how do you know when to say no? How do you K-N-O-W know when to say N-O no? Right.
Do you teach this then to your clients?
Oh, hell yeah.
At Cultivate?
Absolutely. I mean, I try to teach anybody I can. I'm teaching you right now.
So I'm going to talk about this, see if I can do this next year. So my big thing this year was I was going to take 4 weeks away from the business. I talked about this on the show.
All at one time?
That was the intent.
Okay, go for it.
I was too scared.
Why?
So it literally has no, it's really not a reflection of the team. It's just me being an owner in my own shoes.
Do 30 minutes a day.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. 30. Yeah.
Like go down to 30 minutes a day and go. It's not sustainable, but it's like, could I take 3 weeks off at 30 minutes a day?
I ended up doing 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I said, okay.
And you've already done it?
I did one in the spring, and I just got done with one in August. Took 2 weeks.
Congrats. That's huge.
Thank you. And the business is better off because of it, right?
Absolutely.
But you're still sitting here, as you just talked about that, like I'm getting like my palms are sweating about. I work 45 hours a week between X and X, and that's all you're getting from me. But to your point, you hit me with. It forces you to delegate.
It forces me to get really smart. I mean, I had 7 sessions coming up for conferences that I'm speaking at. Yeah. And now I'm only teaching 3. Because you invited me to this, I start getting invited to these other things, and I go, I'm out of time. How am I going to solve this? I'm literally going to conference people like, hey, I know you were expecting me to speak. This person's coming instead, and they're going to speak. Because it doesn't fit. There's no overflow allowed.
Well, it's also, I think, a different mentality from the standpoint of what I guess like old school leadership, new school leadership. I think like back 25 years ago, people that looked at entrepreneurs or even people in their career, right? Probably driven by the baby boom or the 60-hour work week.
Oh, it was all fear.
It was all fear.
It was all fear driven. Yeah, exactly.
And now you sit there, it'd be interesting to have this conversation with somebody that grew up in that era. Yep. Looking at a guy in his late 30s saying, you can't possibly grow a business with working 40 hours a week, dude. And you're like, look at what we've built together.
You set the right vision, you set the right goals, you put the right people in place. Absolutely, it's a reality.
Plus, you got to be energized. Yeah. To your point, like about your wife, where she's like, dude, I'm drained, and I still 9 hours behind.
Right. But I'll tell you, those 45 hours, I'm probably like compared to most producing 80 to 90.
Well, that's also true,
that's
right?
That's the thing, because I get so efficient, I get so productive because my time is truly I can't just, it's not endless, right? It's not an endless amount of time. I mean, the two things I'll share on this is one, you have owners from two different spectrums. You have the owners that struggle and they want to keep putting time in to solve their problem. Okay. And then you have the owner who's lazy, not a bad thing necessarily, but they over delegate too soon.
Okay.
So just be clear, people are listening in from both sides of the spectrum. You come from the first side of the cloth where you'll use time most likely to solve your problem.
Yeah.
Others will just try to outthink the problem, but because that they get stagnant as well. So the key is you got to commit to the number of hours you're going to give everything you have. It's like your practice time. Colby, it's the amount of practice time you're putting for the game that you have to deliver on.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Carve it in stone. Don't break it. Commit to it. And let the rest flow. But you just have to understand there's two people. There's some people also need to hear you're taking it too easy.
Yeah,
like you haven't made it yet. Like this whole thing, in the spirit of exit, as we know, right? Like this thing could blow up on you tomorrow, and you haven't protected your wealth gap. So let's make sure you're really clear of what this looks like.
Yeah. So well, I will say that's I'm gonna have to think about that. Maybe we'll touch base in the new year and see if we could try it. But
create a box. With
that, we are out of time, folks. So, Casey, thanks for coming all the way into Cleveland.
Thanks for having me, man.
Hanging out. That was it was a fun couple of days together. Next show for everybody else is November 22nd. So please subscribe, listen, leave a review on all of your podcast platforms. Thanks everybody for hanging out, and we'll see you soon.